Long before the United States existed as a country, 13 separate British colonies stretched along the eastern coast of North America. These colonies were not a unified nation, they were distinct communities with different economies, religions, and cultures. Some relied on tobacco plantations in the south, others thrived on trade and shipbuilding in the north. Despite their differences, they all shared one thing. They were subjects of the British Crown, governed by rules made thousands of miles away across the Atlantic Ocean. For decades, this arrangement worked well enough. Colonists built their lives, grew their communities, and largely accepted British authority. But that acceptance had limits, and those limits were about to be tested in ways that would change the world forever. The tension began building seriously after 1763, when Britain emerged victorious from the French and Indian War. The war had been expensive, and Britain needed money to pay its massive debts. The solution, from London's perspective, was simple: tax the colonies. Acts like the Stamp Act of 1765 and the Townshend Acts of 1767 placed new financial burdens on colonists. But the colonists had a fundamental objection. They had no representatives in the British Parliament. They were being taxed without having any voice in the decisions affecting them. The phrase, "no taxation without representation," became a rallying cry that echoed through town halls and taverns from Massachusetts to Georgia. Protests grew louder. Boycotts of British goods spread. Then came the Boston Massacre in 1770, where British soldiers fired into a crowd, killing 5 colonists. 3 years later, the Boston Tea Party saw colonists dump an entire shipment of British tea into the harbor. Britain responded with harsh punitive laws, which the colonists called the Intolerable Acts. Rather than crushing the resistance, these measures united it. By 1775, words had turned into warfare. The first shots of the American Revolutionary War were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. Colonial militias faced the most powerful military force in the world. The odds seemed impossible. Yet something remarkable was happening. Representatives from all 13 colonies gathered in Philadelphia for the Second Continental Congress. They debated, argued, and ultimately made one of the most consequential decisions in human history. On July 4, 1776, they adopted the Declaration of Independence, a document largely written by Thomas Jefferson. It declared that all men are created equal and that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. It was not just a political statement, it was a moral argument that would inspire revolutions and movements for centuries to come. The 13 colonies had officially declared themselves free and independent states. Declaring independence and achieving it were two very different things. The Revolutionary War lasted 8 brutal years. General George Washington led the Continental Army through devastating defeats and desperate winters, most famously at Valley Forge in 1777 to 1778. The turning point came when France, eager to weaken its longtime rival Britain, entered the war as an American ally after the American victory at the Battle of Saratoga in 1777. French military support, money, and naval power proved decisive. In 1781, British General Cornwallis surrendered at Yorktown, Virginia, effectively ending major combat operations. And the Treaty of Paris in 1783 formally recognized the United States of America as a sovereign nation, with borders stretching from the Atlantic coast to the Mississippi River. Winning independence was only the beginning of the challenge. The 13 former colonies now had to figure out how to govern themselves together. Their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, gave too little power to the central government and proved unworkable. So in 1787, delegates gathered again in Philadelphia for the Constitutional Convention. After months of debate and compromise, they produced the United States Constitution, a framework for government that balanced power between federal and state authorities. When the Bill of Rights was added in 1791, guaranteeing fundamental freedoms, the foundation of the American Republic was complete. 13 colonies that had once been divided by geography, economy, and culture had forged something entirely new. A democratic republic built not on royal bloodlines or ancient tradition, but on the radical idea that people have the right to govern themselves. That transformation remains one of history's most extraordinary stories.